Welcome to Faith in 5, a weekly video devotional designed to discuss practical spiritual concepts in 5 minutes or less. I'm your host, Mark Vandella. About 4 years ago, I met a guy named Harold. And Harold has a pretty incredible story, and when I met him, he just seemed different. He lights up a room, he's always smiling. Admittedly, he's a little bit quirky, but in the good way, right? He's the guy you want to sit down with, you want to talk to, you want to hear his story, you want to know more. And when I met him, there was a little bit of tension in our church, and he sat me down, he shared his story, he told me all about how he had faced some really difficult times. And he was bound and determined that through that difficulty, he was going to redeem his story. He was going to use his story to help other people. See, Harold had some addiction problems, and they hurt his family and his wife and his marriage and all that sort of stuff. And Harold has decided, he's committed his life to making sure that all of that pain that he caused doesn't go without changing the lives of somebody else. So Harold spends his time 3 to 5 different AA meetings a week. He meets with individuals and listens to their story and then shares his and helps them. See, there's this kind of concept in Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which I think we're all looking for. Viktor Frankl says that there's this idea called tragic optimism. It's having optimism in the face of tragedy. Now, there's a ton to it, but he talks about taking our stories, even the negative. It's not just the good stuff, but the bad stuff. When we're faced with tragedy, how do we take that and redeem it? See, Bob Marley wrote a song called Redemption Song. Right? And in that song, he talks about that we need to take time to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. When we take the time to just dwell on the things that are not going right, we dwell on the past, we dwell on the negative, generally we stay in that spot. And what Harold's done is he's kind of looked at this and said, look, I could continue to be miserable, I can continue to hurt other people, or I can flip this. I can turn this on its head, and I can be an example to others. So in the Bible, 1 Corinthians 10, 11 through 13, Paul is writing to the people in Corinth, and he's trying to explain to them all the things that the Bible has said are examples. All of the stories that you read in the Old Testament are examples to us. It says these things have happened as an example to us. And the moment you think you have it all figured out, right? It says if you think you are standing on solid ground, be careful not to fall. Because those stories are no different than the stories we face today. Anything you're facing now as you look forward to the new year or anything in the past, it's no different from anything anybody else has faced. Some of us decide to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery and redeem this. Some of us stay in it year after year after year. That verse goes on to say that these temptations in your life are no different. Like I said, no different from any others. But God is faithful. He will not allow you the temptation. He will never allow the temptation to be more than you can handle, to be more than you can stand. God will come with you and help you endure. He will always help you find a way out. See, we have a choice. We can continue to dwell on it. We can continue to focus on the negative, or we can trust that God will not give us more. And maybe these things in our lives that are difficult are meant to be redeemed. They're supposed to be lived with tragic optimism, so that, like Harold, we could help other people. So Jeff Manning, in his book called The Land Between, he says that there are spaces, these undesired transitions in our lives. He says these spaces that we most desperately avoid are often the spaces we most desperately need. Make this year different. As you go into 2017, look at your past and figure out how you're going to redeem that. Ask God to join you, because He hasn't given you anything you can't handle. But other people need to hear that story. Redeem the past, but also look to the future and realize whenever you come upon tragedy, whenever you come upon something that's difficult, unplanned things, unplanned transitions, uncomfortable things, when things don't go as your way, hold tight to what Jeff says. And these spaces that we just want to run from, that we desperately avoid, are the places we need. Maybe it's not even just what we need, it's what the world needs. Like 1 Corinthians says, these things happened for an example to us, and maybe your story is an example to others. This week, as you enter into a new year, graph out what things from your past need to be redeemed. Who needs to hear your story so that their lives, your life, that tragedy isn't for nothing. And also prepare as you go into the next year. How will you live with this tragic optimism? Have a great 2017. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to follow us each week, click here to subscribe. And if you want to take it a little bit further, click here for discussion materials.